Welcome to People Are Everything, the show where I ask my guests, who are the 5 people that have shaped the person you are today? And today we have Penny de Valk. Penny is a leadership coach. I first met her way back, where she actually was hosting a leadership training event that I was at. And to say it was love at first sight would be an understatement. I just thought she was absolutely brilliant. And I'm not the easiest of audiences, as you'll come to hear when we reminisce about that. But there's something about her. She's got an incredible voice, first of all. You're going to love her voice. But her intellect, her wisdom, and her calm authority, I think, are the things you're going to love most about her. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the very wonderful Penny de Valk. Well, first of all, welcome to People Are Everything, Penny. This is an absolute thrill for me. And you look amazing. You look like
very good for you to say. We don't even know where this blue background came from, but, I'll take it. It's such a pleasure to be here, Julia, and to see you again, because we've sort of crossed paths for probably since we did some work together pre-pandemic. And, I've loved to see what you were doing. So this is a real joy.
Well, I mean, we'll get to that in a minute, but you do look like some kind of heavenly newsreader. That's what I'm going to call you.
I'm heavenly newsreader. I'm not really sure how I'm going to take that, but, if I find something interesting to say, I shall broadcast it.
Well, listen, the thrills are mine. Yes, we did. We met, 5 or 6 years ago. You were doing a leadership training thing. I completely fell in love with you with that whole thing, to be fair. I was just like fangirling from the off. And, well, I suppose it was so refreshing to have somebody, who kind of spoke the same language as me and but at a much higher level. I learned so much in that session.
Oh,
but I also felt I found a kindred. You're like, oh my God, authentic leadership. How do we sort out the double bind of female leadership? All the stuff you talked about. I think I was just like such a teacher's pet. I remember being a total teacher's pet. I wasn't I?
I don't remember that in you, other than you being really engaged, really contributing, and just being completely up for all the learning that that we did, and having some fun along the way.
But listen, no, that's how we met. I then followed you for quite some time because you were such a pioneer in the podcasting world, because your podcast Grit and the Oyster, I listened to that heavily during the pandemic, at a time when then there weren't a lot of podcast voices that were
really a thing then.
Yeah. No, it wasn't, and you really cut through. And what I admired at the time was the quality of guests that you have and had and continue to have, but also just the kind of community you were starting to build in this space of, very senior women. Some of the people you were speaking to were like extraordinary, had extraordinary career successes. And what I loved about it was how they and you were looking to kind of support up and coming women with their stories, but also, sorry, we can edit this out, but also, using them as sort of role models to bring everybody up. And I thought that was so inspiring and empowering. And I just thought I'd still listen to it now. I think it's absolutely brilliant.
Well, that's great. That's great to hear.
Well, here we are doing my podcast.
I know. This is wonderful.
Yeah.
And I love it. And I love the theme. People are everything. It's just, it's a real treasure.
Oh, thank you. I'm really enjoying myself, I have to be honest. To me, this is the best part of my week. I love finding out who's behind all the people that I admire. So before we get into your 5, we've done how we've met. I always like to know from my guests how they found the process of choosing their 5, because I find that absolutely fascinating. So do you want to share with us how you find making your list?
Yeah, it was really difficult, not from a perspective of like there wasn't anybody out there who had influenced me or shaped me. It's just there were so many people who leave their fingerprints on you in your life, consciously and unconsciously. And especially, family, you would think, well, those are the people who you've spent most of your formative life with. And, mum and dad, I have 4 sisters, husbands, cousins, aunts. So it was like, well, I can't even fit them into my 5.
Sorry.
And then I thought, well, I could be sneaky. I'm a little sneaky in my 5. I'm sure you'll tell me off for that. Maybe I could put sisters together, but all of them have just influenced me very individually, very differently. So it was, so I went back to probably those pivotal times in my education, my professional life, and my personal life, where people have been sort of very influential that I wasn't conscious of at the time, but looking back, you see they were quite pivotal. So yeah, it was a lovely thing to be able to do.
Well, talking of pivotal moments in your life then, before we get really stuck into it, I obviously know you very well, but the listeners won't so much. Some will, because I think you have quite the profile as well in your world. But for those who are more generalist, can you just do a little kind of who you are and what you're all about as well before we dive in?
I'm a leadership coach and educator following a career as an executive. I'm a New Zealander by origin, as you can tell, but I've been living and working in the UK for 25 years now. So my executive career was heading up as CEO, managing director, largely a professional service organization. So growth is sort of my mantra, my MO, but also in the not-for-profit as well as the for-profit. So I was general manager of the Institute of Management. Before I came to the UK, I did 5 years as the CEO of the Institute of Leadership and Management in the UK. But in dispersed, I was with Ceridian, US PLC, for nearly 10 years in different roles. CEO of Savile Group, sold to Penna, built the talent practice up there, and then we sold Penna to Adecco. And that was my opportunity to be independent. So that's when I set myself up as a leadership coach and educator with a specific interest in women in leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I came to that was really because I'd been steeped in leadership. I'm interested in leadership in my own and other people's. It's a real conundrum, and it's very easy for us to romanticize it. It's such hard work. And so I was really interested still in a lot of the leadership development for women in particular that was really failing women, either taking a remedial, you need fixing, you're just not up to it, which we know is inaccurate, or creating victims, creating women who just sit with seething resentment, which we know is also really unhelpful. So both of those things shut down people's learning, shut down people's joy in their jobs, shut down people's lives, frankly, because you're being told, we've got enough, am I good enough, noise going on, without amplifying that through the very development interventions that should be enabling something else. So that's what I do now. That's my job.
Well, and I've experienced it firsthand, and it is very powerful how you frame all of that stuff, because you're right. We don't want to be pouring more kind of negativity on top of the burden that we already have in terms of finding our place in the corporate world. So I came away very uplifted by your sessions, and actually it led me to doing spending quite a lot of my time actually on mentorship. I did a lot of mentorship post-star sessions with the sort of more junior women of the firm, and which I still continue to this day. And it's one of the most rewarding things I do. And what I love about you also is that you've been in the leadership chair. So when you said just now, my own leadership and how I help others, you've been a CEO yourself, and you understand the burden of pressure and and also all the double standards of being a female leader. How we have to be, and I've heard you speak a lot about this, how we have to be bright and shiny, but not too bright and shiny. Confident, but not too confident, forthright, but not too, and it's like this double bind that you talk about quite a lot, really resonated with me. And I'm sure, with lots of people that you've done work with.
And I think, it's, I know with all the, diversity fatigue out there and everyone going, oh God, isn't this over? And I would love it to be over. So if all of my work is deeply research-based and evidence-based, and it's not to make the point, but to say we are never, while we are the generation, hopefully only a couple more, where think leader, think male, men take charge, women take care is still kind of embedded in our notion of leadership. And so that's why, we get women have these sort of conflicting expectations between their competence and their likability. And it's not a dilemma that our male colleagues face. And it's still very real, but it's not insurmountable. I love the word you use, the pioneering. We are pioneers in this. Mm-hmm. And, your daughter's daughters and our goddaughters and nieces' daughters hopefully won't experience it, because the faster we can normalize women in leadership, then those stereotypes will ultimately erode. So, it's just being pragmatic, doing it with joy. Solving for competing demands is what leaders need to do all day. So we just have another set. So let's work on those things, but intentionally, as opposed to just being exhausted. And we still see women disproportionately falling out of the leadership pipeline. And, what I hate is to see these women who kind of internalize that tension or not being able to, navigate that as a personal failure. And that is probably the saddest, and leaving thinking they're really not cut out for this leadership stuff.
I smiled just now and kept the smile going because you used that word intentionally. I can't tell you how often I have used that word since, again, I'm totally fangirling here, aren't I? But you talked a lot about that, intentionality, be intentional. I don't think it comes naturally to us as girls until it's pointed out that that's a really important, way of navigating the world, is to be intentional about it and say, I am going in this direction, and I will, navigate as sophisticatedly as I can. I'm going to bring everybody with me. It's all very positive. Your messages are so positive and they're so collaborative, and they strike a particular chord with me because. And I'm not the easiest of audiences in these things, Penny, because I used to reject this whole idea of female anything. I used to be I'm Julia. I don't need to talk about women anything.
Measures. Thank you very much.
Yes, you can keep your women things. I never saw myself in gender terms, but of course I am. Of course, I can't control how people see me. I might feel very comfortable in my skin, but I'm still walking around society. So the way you kind of got me on side with this whole thing was it was about showing up as your full self. And I think when you started going in that direction in the sessions, I really sort of, that really lit me up. It was because I totally believe in that whole person showing up, being intentional. You can tell I've just completely drunk the Kool-Aid, Penny. I've got the lot. But those things, they've really stuck with me. And I
get you 6 years later.
Completely.
Lovely to hear.
Yeah. So listen, we could go on for hours about all of that. But thank you for sharing all of that. I am so keen to see who your five are. I really am. So I think we should just dive in now, because otherwise we can talk leadership all day. So yeah, tell me who's number one.
Well, my number one probably won't be a surprise, because I think there is a theme running, is my mother, Barbara Mary Foy. Mum was born and raised in Auckland, one of a big Catholic family. And she sort of has, obviously, we're influenced by our parents. But what I've taken from Mum, she's no longer with us, but there were lots of things in her life that could have made her very bitter and resentful. She had a lot of very difficult things happen to her. She was taken out of school really young, and she was really bright and hated it and cried. And even her, beloved older brother stood up, and she said, I was taken out of school so my brothers could go to private schools. And that probably also informed why she was so adamant that all of her 5 daughters, and she had 5 daughters, would have, you know, in their adolescence, would have a private school education. So she, you know, and that was really hard for her. It stayed with her probably all her life. And she went, you know, on and retrained as a counselor, etc. But that really did stick with her. And then her older brother, who did stand up to her father, didn't help, who she really adored, a real soulmate, again, was bookish. He was flying, as his brother was, with the RAF during the war. And on a sortie over Norway, and 3 weeks before the war ended, they came down. So, you know, then she lost her beloved elder brother. She finally got to go to nurse. She went nursing, and she got rheumatic fever. She had to prickly all out of nursing, you know, so she had health issues for the rest of her life. She then got a job as an air hostess on Teal. Her father would not let her do that. It was not appropriate for her to do. So she was always sort of resourceful. Lots of things happened. And then, you know, my father died a couple of days before my 2nd birthday. So at 32, she was left with 3 little girls under 6, widowed with mortgages. And you never heard her do anything other than, well, how are we going to fix this? What are we going to do? So I think that she was somebody who I've learned resourcefulness, resilience, optimism, definitely a glass half full person, and joy. Something about, even I remember cousins and friends go, oh, you know, Auntie Barbara, she was the one you'd go to when you needed to just have a non-judging conversation, very open and curious about the world, very generous of spirit. So yes, she has made has shaped a huge amount for me. And she tolerated my bolshiness and my, you know, wanting to not have a conventional life, and letting me fly. I never got any of the, you know, my other friends who had lived, you know, my other expat friends, colleagues would often have people, oh, we never see you when you're coming home. I never got that. She was light, stayed in regular touch, but she was absolutely able to let us fly and be who we needed to be. And at the same time, you know, we had a reconstituted family. She married again, Matthew de Valk, my dad. And then, so there's a sort of almost a 10-year gap between me and my 2 younger sisters. And, you know, when I look at what she did to keep that family intact as sisters, as 5 sisters, you know, we look at ourselves, we're very different people. We're closer than a lot of families who completely share the same DNA. But I think it was because, sorry to use this word again, she needed to be deliberate about it. She wanted to, you know, so she spent a lot of time on relationships, how families connect, how you manage tensions, conflict. And so she was there were good lessons in there as well in terms of understanding the importance of relationships. Wow. So she's one.
Oh, rightly so. Gosh. I mean, there's so much here, isn't there? I mean, what a life, firstly. And we forget the sort of the timings of this. So she would have been, what year was she born?
Oh, can't remember. Late 20s, yeah.
Late 20s. So, you know, when women generally back then, you know, as she's experienced, were very secondary in terms of priority in terms of family dynamics. So you're wondering how she got so equipped to be so resourceful and so you know, if you kind of expect that to come from a childhood where she's experienced loads of things, or she had a very wide open life, but actually sounds like she was very restricted, and that's where she probably got her.
Yeah, maybe. I think her mother, my grandmother, who was a midwife, so she was, you know, as well as raising all the kids, would have expected. And, you know, growing up in New Zealand was very free-range childhood.
Okay.
You know,
all right.
So it was restricted in terms of its conventionality,
Mm.
My grandfather was, the middle class, upper middle class. For him, she said, oh, he was just a snob. But there was an element, but my grandmother wasn't. And, very far reaching, did lots of things for other people. So she was being taught all the way through other muscles to use in terms of her experience. And she had great aunts, or her aunts, her mother's sisters, who were also very different. And then she had this huge family, her own sisters, that, were a great resource. But yes, it was probably a conventional upbringing. But then, they went out and did all sorts of things and played tennis and, and she was, a very young girl during the war, and a lot of the Americans were on R&R in Auckland. And so she got to know a lot of those people. Grandma obviously had hoped that other families were looking after her two boys as she would be looking after, these young boys. And, she said, it was completely naive and we would just go and dance our shoes off with these American boys to Glenn Miller, etc. So she had a lot of joy, natural. She had an instinct for joy and curiosity and people. We did a lot of laughing in our family. We still do.
It does sound a very joyful home. Sorry about this voice. I wanted to ask though, what's the gap between, you're losing your biological father at just before 2. I mean, that must have been, even though you can't cognitively reason it at that age, you feel it. So there would have been impact on you on that. And then how big a gap before, was it Matthew, did you say? Matthew de Valk came into your life?
Well, I don't recall anything, obviously. I can't recall my father dying, but obviously it would have made a huge difference because, Mum was going through that whole thing and my elder sisters were at school. So from 2 to 5, it was just really me and Mum and her. So I would have seen, her grief and her anxiety and her needing to get on with things. Figuring it out. She got boarders in to help pay the mortgage, but she kept us very separate from that. There was young women at the time. If you were a teacher or a dental nurse or a kindergarten teacher, that you would board as opposed to go flat. Right. So she was incredibly busy. So in that time, and then I was 3 years. Then who was then Matthew, and of course, I think I asked every man that came into the house whether they would be my daddy.
Not at all awkward for your mum.
Embarrassment. And so, he was a Dutchman who had come out after the war. And we were, bringing in people from Europe, and there was nothing left. And he was from Rotterdam. There's nothing left. So he came out and thought, because he was a Dutchman, he would know how to make cheese. So they put
funny.
And it counts. Very glad to be in New Zealand. He never went back. Interesting. Mum and I went back to Holland and saw all the relatives and where he was during the war on the island of Texel. But he didn't want to go back. His brothers came out and his dad came out. But so yeah, he was Matthew until I was about 5 when they got married, and then he was dad. And then 9 years later, well, not 9 years later, I was 9 when Miriam was born, and then Anna was born a couple of years later.
And I love the fact that your mum committed so wholeheartedly to making it a whole family. I mean, it sounds so obvious, doesn't it? The 5 sisters, but it takes work, I think, to blend those 2 families together. I imagine there'd be some kind of frictions in the early days, perhaps, of pulling it all together. I don't know. But the fact that she decided it, and then we are going to be a complete family. This is it. These 5 kids are our kids. That takes some dedication.
Yeah, and it does. And I'm sure it has an effect on you. That loss is obviously, even though I don't recall it, as you say, cognitively, it will be in there somewhere. But it's not something that I didn't feel I could kind of just take with me in the world. And, I was really lucky that, my father, and it's sort of weird. People say, oh, so she's your half sister. And we just all go, what?
Yeah.
It just seems weird. Or, oh, you mean your stepdad?
Yeah.
No, we just didn't. And it wasn't because it was, sanctioned. It just would have felt very strange to say, any more than you would say to someone, oh, but yeah, that's your adopted sister. It's like, no, they're sisters. So, yes, and, it was hard, really hard. And things, she was angry and frustrated a lot of the time because, there wasn't any money. She was sort of trying to have side hustles all the time, working. She was determined to give all 5 daughters and their secondary school education, a private education, which Dad didn't really think that was necessary. That, her own history of being taken out of school. And it was really, it was really good for me. I'm not sure that it was the right thing for all 5 of us, but it was really, really good for me.
And did she spend all her days in Auckland, or did she travel or live anywhere else? Or
when we went, when we were living, when my father died, when I was 2, we were in Morrinsville, which is a small kind of rural. It's now about a couple of hours out of Auckland. So she was there, but she was very keen to move us back to Auckland as soon as possible. So we were just there a few years, and then she moved to Auckland, and Dad started building our house in Auckland.
Amazing. And you're based between still, aren't you? You were London based mostly, but you're you just visit New Zealand, or do you have a place there as well?
No, just a visit. We were back there in January, February. It's always a good time to go to New Zealand, middle of summer. So I'll probably, it's probably every couple of years, go back for a couple of months.
Oh, wonderful. I love it. Oh, listen, it really does warm my heart to hear all of that. I think from, it's no small thing to lose a sibling. And it's definitely, if you're a family of girls, I'd imagine to lose the sort of, is the only son, wasn't it? For the only brother.
She had boys. Yeah,
she had other boys. I'd misunderstood that. The eldest son.
And definitely her soulmate.
Yeah, that's no small thing. So she's had her fair share. So I hope she's resting in peace right now.
Yes.
Having lived a really good life and produced 5 extraordinary girls. Well done.
She did. She was amazing. And I don't think she ever saw herself as being a victim of anything or someone who had a series of losses and disappointments. Because, I think that was what was such a big shift for her, that she just was able to see, like many people, but the song she wanted at her funeral was, what a beautiful world. And that is basically how she spent her days, very conscious of the joy, especially as she got older, because there were, times when we were all at home and at school and there wasn't a lot of money and she was trying to figure everything out. She was very, I'm sure, anxious and angry and trying to figure things out as she went. But she was always very conscious of the family unit and what she needed to do to ensure that it stayed intact and healthy.
Well, Barbara, you sound amazing. Well done. Quite the role model. I can see where you get a lot of your drive from, for sure, and a lot of your values. So, okay, is there anything more you want to say about Barbara before we move on to number 2? Or?
No, I think you've got the gist of her.
Oh, good. All right, well done. Okay, let's talk about number 2 then, please.
Number 2 is Claudia Wysocki, Sister Wysocki, as she was at the time. And on my first day at secondary school, obviously I was incredibly nervous, very excited. And in New Zealand, we tack on our summer holidays to Christmas. which sort of makes sense. But what it means is we go back to school in February, in the hottest month of the year. It's like sending kids back to school in August. Anyway, no excuse. I was in this huge assembly, whatever it was, 9 o'clock in the morning, and I fainted. I've never fainted before in my life, and I've never fainted since. But I fainted probably much to the embarrassment of my elder sister, Megan, who was somewhere in the assembly. Anyway, I sort of remember coming to and sitting outside on the steps with this, young woman who was Sister Waisoki, Claudia Waisoki. And I remember it so clearly. She was so kind. And, I'd had an earlier experience just for a year, my first year at school, at a Catholic school. And it wasn't good. And I didn't, I felt very, I just never enjoyed it right from the day one, probably. Probably that's where my challenge around gender comes from, because day one, so pleased finally to be catching up to my big sisters and going to school. And and I went to school and we had our little uniforms. But apparently I had the wrong color sandals on, because girls supposed to wear red sandals and boys wear brown sandals. And Mum was, obviously so broke, she just borrowed probably a cousin's sandals, and they sent me home.
Oh,
no. It is old. So maybe that's where I've also got netted that whole thing of like, who cares about the color of the sandals?
Yeah.
But at first, but only did a year. Then we were in the public education system, which was great in Auckland and very close to home. And so I was so mortified, but she was so kind. So Claudia Waisoki was, I remember that moment. And then in the subsequent sort of 4 or 5 years I was at secondary school, she was never my teacher, but she was sort of always there as sort of this kind but strict, warm and engaging person. And I'm pretty sure she was quite influential. When I was about 16, I got, because we lived a long way away from the school. We didn't live in the hallowed areas of private schools. So we were all spending like at least 4 hours a day commuting. And then, getting home and having things to do. And so when I was early 16, I got this boarding bursary, so I could be a week boarder from Monday to Friday. And there's no way Mum and Dad had the money for that. I'm very sure that Claudia Waisoki had something to do with that, which was fantastic. No, I was so homesick, and I'd call her home all the time. But I had 4 hours a day.
Back to yourself.
To do nothing.
Yeah.
To do nothing but read and go to the library or sleep. It was amazing. And so my grades I was an average student. I was really good at English. And so I think there must be something more in there if I was motivated. And so my grades just all skyrocketed. I had 4 hours a day to do that. And it was, I'm sure she had something to do with that. I don't think Mum and Dad would ever have paid for that bursary. So she ended up leaving she was no longer a nun. She ended up getting married and was a really powerful educationalist in the UK, in New Zealand, ended up running a private school and then moving on from there. So she was always very key to young women's education and really committed to it. So Claudia Waisoki, in response to this 5, thinking she was sort of pivotal at a time in my education where I could have lost interest, lost heart. I was sort of not really in any group because, we were outside the sort of social situation. I wasn't really a boarder because they were all already well established by the time I turned up. So it was actually really good for me. I think I'm a natural kind of outsider anyway. I think maybe I hang on to that identity as something that I kind of value. Yeah. And so it was really quite pivotal in my education to be able to get that time and focus and to see that when I applied myself, I could pretty much do anything. So she was great, and I was looking at she died in her early 70s of ovarian cancer, and I was looking at some of the obituaries, and one of them said, "Oh, when you're around Claudia, she's such a gorgeous person. You feel like you've been touched by an angel." She was so there was something about her, and she was fun. I mean, someone was telling me it's probably an apocryphal story. The last time they saw her, after she got married, she had her feet up on the desk and she was smoking a cigar. She really was my kind of gal. So she, she was quite influential. She shaped something in me, and with that very light touch. That's what I loved about it. Not effusive, but it started on my first day at secondary school, where I was just sitting with this woman. It was a very liberal order at stage. Got a great liberal education. And so they didn't have habits or anything like that. They were just sitting in a blue dress with a little cross on and being such a great human, understanding I was embarrassed and just making it okay.
Wonderful. Well, first of all, she's got the world's best name. I keep getting new names in this show, and I was just thinking that's the best name. No, this is the best name. So that's she definitely would have got my attention on that alone. But there's something about the one teacher that sees you. It comes up as a theme often in this podcast, where if teachers are spoken about, and they often are, so they feature quite heavily, it's that ability to reach in and see that that person needs something that they can provide and wanting to do it. Because we can all see people who need things. We can go, oh, that person needs that. But to compel yourself to actually take action and invest, and particularly to invest so discreetly, I am very impressed by that, because I tend to do things and I do them very loudly. Because, I don't know, it's in my character to go, hey, I've just done this thing. So when I hear of people who just subtly in the background, not expecting anything back in return, not even acknowledgement or noticing that it might have been her, you didn't know for sure, she probably did, but just that quiet dignity that just says, Penny needs some support. I'm going to give it to her. I'm not even going to let her know that that's what I've done.
Yeah.
And just to have so much generosity and grace, it must feel amazing to be on the receiving end of that.
Yeah, that's really true. It's the non-fanfare of it. And that probably, was her style, to be influencing and paying attention to the people around her with real acuity, and that was a lesson as well. She pretty much knew what was going on with people.
Do you think?
And a school of hundreds.
Did you ever get the opportunity to give thanks while she was alive?
I did not. No.
Interesting, isn't it? Because I have teachers in my life, and I think every now and then I go on the old socials to see if they're still going and could I find them. But of course, one of the challenges of being a female in this life is people change their names.
Yes.
And once they get married, you lose them. You just can't find them. So, there's many lost women from my background that if I had a different method of getting them, I would love to go back and say thank you for that. But we're honouring them now, aren't we? So that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I didn't, and I probably I could have and I should have, but I don't. I think she was also the person that kind of understood the difference it had made in terms of proffering and delivering that support. And I think for Claudia, that's enough. That was the reward.
Yeah. But we could have a conversation entirely about why don't we do that? Because I think there's something in us as human beings that there's a shyness and a reticence to go up to people and say, thank you for that. That really made a huge difference to my life. And I don't know, maybe there's a little part of me with this podcast that is trying to change that a bit and make it more normalized.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, to go up to people and go, thanks. It's not, it sounds so obvious, really. But that's what I want to do. But no, there are special places in heaven for people like Claudia. She's probably up there with your mum, actually.
Yes, they're probably having you good on that, or probably sharing a cigar, in fact.
Love that image. Let's hope. Let's hope.
So,
Oh, brilliant. All right. Okay. Should we move on to number 3?
yes, now this is where I've been very sneaky. I think you're going to tell me off.
All right.
Because I have created a composite. And this is what I call my girl gang.
Okay.
My tribe of primarily women friends, some of whom know one another, some who don't, who have, again, maybe it comes from my kind of outsider identity that I probably embrace too readily. So I've had to sort of curate and create my tribe. I've got this huge ballast in my family, my sisters and cousins. But I've got probably 12 women in my life around the world who have been incredibly influential in terms of, and I think, what do they give me? They certainly give me courage, because it's sort of, I guess the word is ballast, Julia, but it's maybe not. When we're very different. They don't all know one another. There are themes. I was trying to think of, well, what are the golden threads around this composite, this sort of tribe that have really shaped me in terms of the sort of unconditional, we know you're a bit out there and that's fine, and joy, challenge, we don't always agree, lots of laughter, and just always knowing that whatever confronts you, that you're not out there on these choppy seas on your own, and that people have either experienced it. We don't all solve one another's problems. Sometimes we're just there to pour coffee or pour wine. And also they are all really bright. Get that energy from being able to kind of view the world, all optimists, which is kind of interesting. Maybe not. No, yeah. Some more, pessimistic about the world. So anyway, my girl gang, I guess, have been hugely influential in terms of, as I've, gone into different places. One of the things I'm sure that I got off my mother is she would have been able to have much more is wanderlust.
Yeah.
Always kind of roaming, what's over there, what's on here. I love being on the road. And it doesn't really matter where I've ended up, that those relationships have stayed. They nourish me personally, emotionally, and psychologically. Intellectually, they stimulate me. And there's just something knowing that there's this ballast in these 12 very different, very capable and impressive women with whom I'm connected.
Yeah. No, I can see that. I think ballast is the right word. It's kind of holding you in your world. It's like support. It's a supportive word, isn't it? It's what brings to mind. And I'm just curious, are they all from different countries, different places, and times of your life?
Yeah, different times of my life. From university, through to new friend I made just 5 or 6 years ago. And no, that sounds terrible. But someone used the word the other day about needing to clear her life out of her duty friends. Whoa. So just people like, they don't add to my life. They actually sometimes take stuff away from me, in terms of the energy and the time I have in my life, and so I was sort of quite shocked, but I understood what she meant. Yeah. These are, again, going to use that word, these are friends who I'm deliberate about. I'm very conscious that relationships atrophy, personally and professionally, unless we pay attention to them. So if we want to do that, if we want to keep investing and staying connected with the people in our life, well, we need to choose that with care.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I say to my kids all the time that the friendships you choose will shape you, will shape your partner obviously has a big impact, but also the friendship group that you choose. And I do understand this idea of shedding I talk about the cuckoo in the nest. That's my sort of analogy for it, which is, if you've got that one friend that occupies so much space and it's not necessarily positive, it leaves no room for anyone else. I love the idea of you collecting all these incredible women all through your life. But I do get your point also about nurturing them. You can't just take them for granted. It's not a passive thing, is it, friendship?
It's not, because they will fall away.
Mm.
And it's not about, being in one another's pockets all the time, but being aware that, some my friends who, when they are in trouble, will, lock down, and you can't, and sometimes you just got to go knock on the door, literally or figuratively, and know that it's not about you, it's about them. And that's what the nature of friendship is. Are you reading what you know? And someone may well be really in trouble, and that's when they're at their most quiet. And to understand that, to not be intrusive. I think, it's friendship is. I really think we need to teach it at school.
Yeah, I agree.
I think particularly in our digital age with social media, it's a life skill, and it doesn't happen by default. It really doesn't. Relationships don't. Marriages don't. Teams don't. We need to know how to do this. And, we wait for it to feel natural, or we bump into people, or we find people in our life and you think, oh, she was really interesting, but then we don't do anything about it. We're, as you say, we're shy, or why would they want to have anything to do with me? And so, we could be more courageous in making those connections, or just pursuing them a little further, because I think friendship is so hugely important for us throughout our lives. It's so nourishing and on so many levels. And I wanted to acknowledge that group, even though they're very individual, that group of friends who have been amazingly important for me in my life.
Something's just literally just struck me now listening to you. We put so much, in fact, some of the words you just said, I know you would use them in your leadership coaching for the betterment of collegiate, colleague relationships. There's so much out there in terms of romantic relationships. So little out there for friendships. So little guidelines and, behavior strategies, or even just, to know how to engage with new people that are on a friendship basis. So you're not going to work with them and they're not going to be your romantic partner. But how do you make friends? How do you keep a friend? How do you know if it's a good friend? None of these things are taught by anybody.
How do you want a friend? Yeah. So look, it's worth just actually, you can imagine if we did need to teach that, because as you say, we teach networking is a lot of the same principles. There's a lot of things like how do you make, teams thrive? How do you, but why isn't there how to make friends?
I totally agree.
In a way that makes it feel tacky and inauthentic. I think that's what turns people off. Ooh, it's going to be, because it won't feel natural, it might look contrived, and friendships need to be. But I think you can curate a group of friends and make those true, real friendships that are sustained and will carry through your life in different ways, and we've all had awful things happen to us. And, there's been losses and divorces and children and not children and work catastrophes. And there's something about our heart muscle that's really important, that we learn to be with people and to also ask for the help that we need when things are awful.
And when you said the word contrived there, that's further secured it for me, which is chasing a romantic partner is contrived. Everybody knows that's what you're doing.
Yes.
When you're in work, it's contrived. You have to work with these people. They're in your life. Your family is contrived. You're born with them. But friendship is the only place where there isn't that. And you have to go and just, work out of the 8 billion who are your compatible people.
Yeah.
And as you say, you've come up with 12. I don't think I could even come up with 12.
Don't forget, I've swapped continents. So.
Yeah, you've collected a few.
I've probably got 6 and 6.
Yeah. No, I certainly know a lot of people, and I know what you're meaning by that. But it's like I know loads of people, but true friends, the way you've described, I probably got 5 out of 8 billion. And you're absolutely right. We should be taught it because it is really hard. It's so rewarding, but it's incredibly hard because it isn't a contrived space. It's wide open.
Yeah.
And I love the fact you're making new friends. I'm making new friends, Penny.
I know.
It's nice
doing that because we know how important, everything that we're doing as we get older, from exercise and nutrition, but all of our social connections are just as important for us in terms of how they energize us, what we learn from people, staying curious, staying, as I talk about that heart muscle, figuring out how to create a friendship with new people.
Well, I just want to finish on this because we could talk for hours, I'm sure. But I'm smiling because this person that has now become my friend, and we're women of a certain age, this person and I, and even at our age, she turned around to me and actually said, "Can we be friends?" And I was like, "Yes, we can." But it was after several meetings, but I just loved the vulnerability of that because I could have gone, yeah, all right then, fine. But you know what I mean? But I was so happy that she saw this as a potential friendship and was kind of wanting to get to that status quickly, as opposed to let's see how it happens. But for someone, of a certain age to go, can we be friends? And I was like, yes.
Yeah. Because, we stopped saying that when we're about 6 or 7.
Exactly.
Be my friend. And we said that when we were little, and all of our instincts were right.
Yes.
And then as we become more self-conscious, when we get to about 7 or 8, we stop saying that.
Yeah.
But we really are asking that and looking for that, but we don't articulate it very clearly and we don't pursue it very deliberately. And so that's my sneaky getting
12 for 1
girl gang in there. Yeah.
All right, 12 for 1. And actually sounds like an extremely positive girl gang. I watched Mean Girls the other day for the first time. Someone said, go and watch Mean Girls. Have you ever heard of this film?
I have heard of the film. I just couldn't watch it.
No, it's not something I would normally watch, but it was on an aeroplane. And it was, I thought, do you know what? I've got nothing else to do. I'll just put this on.
Yeah.
And it was everything that was toxic about female relationships. And I was just so disappointed in it. I was just like, that is a trope. There's always a trope about girl gangs, this. It's always portrayed as this negative kind of toxic. Everyone's being a little bit bitchy, a little bit behind their backs. But that isn't how it is in real life. Real life girl gangs are, as you say, they're the ballast of your life. They're the people that know you. They see you. They hold hands with you through life.
Yeah.
And my girls, I've got a small gang of girls. I can't imagine life without them. They literally are my everything. So no, I didn't really. I thought it was funny. It did make me chuckle in parts. Yeah. But I thought, here we go, another film program about the meanness of girl gangs. And I just thought, yeah.
And I guess I was lucky at school. We didn't really have that kind of bullying culture, and I know people do now, and perhaps with social media, it's kind of amplified because people get to be mean anonymously, or without having to look at someone in the eye. But yeah, I didn't experience that at school either.
Yeah.
And it certainly would not have been tolerated in our family.
No.
That whole notion of being mean or having a go or snipey or sniffy or being even critical.
Yeah, I like that. And Claudia definitely wouldn't have put up with it, would she?
She wouldn't have put up with it for a minute.
She would have said, no, that's enough of that. All right, brilliant. Well, I'm glad you snuck the 12 in. I think that was really nice to hear about that. Okay, so I think we're on number 4 now, aren't we? Let's get my numbers right.
My number 4 is Tukaki Waititi. And and he was a probation officer. My first proper job after my degree in English and philosophy was as a probation officer. And I was posted.
Sorry, I need to stop you there. Sorry, your first job was as a probation officer
Yeah.
from university.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we got to that. All right, carry on. Proceed. Thank you.
Which was incredible. But they posted in the days where they just sent you where you. I was posted up to Whangarei, which is a couple of hours north of Auckland in Northland, very Māori area. I was the first woman. A lot of women weren't in probation service in that stage. They tended to become social workers. I was really clear. I didn't want to be a social worker. I wanted to be a probation officer. And here I was, this kind of young, white, middle class, long-haired girl going into. They'd never had a woman there. Anyway, John and Jim were fantastic. They were great. No one ever underestimated me. The judges, the courts, the police were fantastic. But one of the senior probation officers there was Duthie, Māori, and he had, and he was sort of tough but supportive. And part of what I learned from him was he just put me into situations that I just had to get on with. So he didn't mollycoddle me. So, my first parolee was the head of, came out of prison, was, the head of Black Power. So they didn't sort of say, oh, well, she's not going to be able to cope with that. But nor did they just push me into things that they thought, oh, let's see if she can manage this. It was a real moderation. But he had something in Māori, and it's hard to quite capture it. It's called mana, and it's power. So it comes from authority. It's authority, respect, credibility, probably also a spiritual power in the community. So you saw that in action. So I'm not sort of romanticizing it because it was a very tough, there's a lot of poverty, still is in the area. There was a lot of gang violence. It was really tough. But he kind of took me into I was incredibly privileged to be able to go with him to a tangi, which is a Māori funeral, on the marae, which is big, and he just dumped me there. So, you have a body there and everyone speaking to it for over 3 or 4 days, and we're all just sleeping in there. And so I was just with all the women and thinking, what do I do now? All of them looking at me like, who is this chick? So at 4:30, when all the women got up and went to the kitchen, I thought, well, I guess that's what I do. So that was a few days of just, getting up early and feeding people and them getting used to me and then just take me out into, I don't know whether they would do it anymore. Just let young women just go out into the wilds and do my job. And I think there was something about him that I learned from. Again, it wasn't effusive. It was really strong and powerful, not underestimating me, not putting me into situations, that whole business of learning where you're just at the edge and also being uncomfortable most of the time because I was out. I didn't know where I was culturally. I had done a year of Māori language at university, so maybe they thought, well, send her off to Northland, and was really, figuring out this new job and what I had to do and how to exercise my authority as a young girl, where I needed to exercise my authority and to be observing him, and also having, John and Jim there who were fantastic. So it was a great opportunity. But when I look back, it was a bit like Claudia at that kind of educationally, there was this kind of click. I think what Took gave me, and I was only there a couple of years in the North Island, and he had this, and it was interesting. Again, it was like I did with Claudia. He died in his early 70s quite suddenly, and in some of the obituaries they said that he was a big man. It was a small man, but he was big. He had huge mana, and in a very quiet, non-loud way.
Mm-hmm.
And they said he was very good. What he did is he guided people with a mature and protective hand. And I thought,
Mm.
wow, that was pretty much, it's a bit like what they were talking about, what was said about Claudia around you feel like you've been touched with an angel by this
Yeah.
gorgeous person. That he was really good for me because I felt sort of safe but challenged
Mm.
in that time learning. But at the same time, I saw a leadership role model, which
Yep.
probably even unconsciously was happening with Claudia Wysocki.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a power that is not about power over,
Yeah.
maybe a spiritual element of being powerful, which is, actually your power is what you give, not what you get.
Yeah.
That was really important, and that was quite critical in my professional life. And I was only there a couple of years. Then I met, my husband moved back to Auckland. So, took Waititi, a really important man and actually very influential in the early days of my career.
And what struck me while you were talking is, if you take Claudia on this one hand and you took on the other, they are kind of the embodiment of female power on this side and male power on this side, but in such a rich and warm and sort of, like you say, that quiet power, that quiet feminine power, and that quiet male power.
Yes.
But Took strikes me as the epitome of the best of men. Whereas, and I know we're in the business, you and I, of because we've had to kind of amplify women so much because there wasn't a lot of amplification going on, so somebody had to do it. So I put myself in that category as well, of amplifying female qualities in the workplace and life generally. But there isn't a lot of voices out there at the moment, a lot of positive voices about the best of masculinity.
Yeah.
And actually, the words you described about him, that quiet authority, that innate power that isn't getting over someone, is actually serving. And the fact that people felt it, even if they didn't understand necessarily what it was, to me, that is the embodiment of the best of masculinity. That protection, that word you use, I felt safe with him.
Well,
No, and it's not talked about enough, I think, at the moment.
I agree. And, even all the work I do always starts with the assumption that how we can, level the playing field does not come at the cost of men.
No, never.
And all of the research shows this, that where there is more gender diversity in organizations at senior levels, the men, it does something to the culture. The men are just as ambitious. They are, they know that this is about talent. It's not about special measures. It's about, oh gosh, if she gets that job, it means I can't get this. And all of the men, throughout my career, I've really only had one boss who I just chose to leave.
Yeah.
They've been incredible, sometimes clumsy in terms of how they've supported me because they didn't really know what was going on, but always were the ones that said, you should go for that. What about this? Really good supporters, good mentors, very generous of spirit. So I just won't have this demonizing of men. Most of them are really great allies. Many just walking around on eggshells thinking they're going to get everything wrong. And so, not having the conversations we need to have with joy and with laughter and not always taking ourselves that seriously. So, the work I do with organizations usually starts at the C-suite with the men and you just we need to just have the conversations and, oh, well, why are we having women only, leadership? Yes, of course you will be in the room talking about, and everything will be very transparent in terms of what we're talking about, whether it's the double bind or how women need to manage our own autopilots, which get in the way of our showing up as a leader. So I'm kind of intrigued by that and how they can support it. And most of them are just absolutely delighted. All of the mentor work I do in organizations and say, well, we're just going to have a conversation about, mentor, just a refresher around mentoring skills. All the guys who turn up and say, I don't know what to do,
Yeah.
how to mentor. And it's wonderful just to dial down that, just be who you are. Think about sponsorship as well as learning. Just dialing, because a lot of men now are not mentoring women because they're so nervous about getting something wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. This is not work I do is never at the expense of men. It's bringing men into the conversation because I have been very lucky with the men in my career and in my personal life. I've had 2 husbands. How on earth did I get so lucky to have those 2 men in my life? I wasn't lucky the first time because I lost him. But, then what are the chances of getting another one who's fabulous? So,
Yeah.
I think we don't want this to be a contest. We can't, because it's not a zero-sum game. Leadership is so important in the world right now. And we just need to make sure it's not about women are better leaders. There's no evidence to that. It's just about let's get all of the talent at the table who want to be leaders. Not all women do. But if you aspire to it and you've got the capability, let's just make sure that leaky pipeline, just that broken rung, we can just go, let's just keep them in there a little longer.
Yeah, I agree.
Some navigation skills, and most of the men in those organizations will be the first to want to be a part of the solution.
Yeah, 100%. I'm glad we made space for this little segment. It kind of came naturally, didn't it? But I wanted to be, it's great that people listening here understand that is where we are coming from. Because it's so, people naturally assume if you're in the sort of leadership and supporting women work, that it is at the expense of men, and it absolutely isn't. And I love it. I love overhearing things, which, I don't know, I notice things a lot, and maybe this is so commonplace, but I was overhearing a conversation between 2 guys the other day, and the way they spoke about this woman was so wonderful. They were like, and not in any sort of patronizing way, it was along the lines of, oh, absolutely, she's amazing. She's going to excel in this. I know that she's going to absolutely succeed. It's the breath of fresh air for what we need. And I was listening and I'm going, wow, how far we've come. I mean, I grew up in the 80s. My career was in the 80s. Same. It wasn't like that, Penny, honestly.
No.
So, I'm very encouraged. And I think what you said just now about creating, I didn't really say it in these words, but it was like, men are, in my experience, are wanting to do the right thing. If we give them the tools and the framework and the permission and the guidelines, like you say, when they come to you and say, help me be a better mentor, then they really take it on. And they just need to know what the boundaries are. And, I'm just glad we made space for that. I'm not going to summarize your summary. I think it's absolutely, you've said it all. You said it all.
And I think it is important to say, because, in these sort of hyper-partisan, binary, finger-wavy times, it's very easy for people to think that this is some sort of shouty, I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And those conversations go absolutely nowhere. And we need to be very mature and to be facilitating those conversations, because we are the bridge.
Yeah.
We are the bridge, Julia. We are the bridge between what was my grandmother. My mother was taken out of school.
Yeah.
But my grandmother couldn't imagine the influence I have had in boardrooms. And so we just got to accept that this is part of our social evolution. Yeah. But we have a responsibility as women leaders to go, let's be skillful, let's be deliberate, let's be intentional, let's be role models, so that the women coming behind us in a generation or two won't feel these tensions to the same extent. So, it's a job to be done, but we have to have grown-up, mature conversations to be able to do that.
Hurrah for that. Absolutely. Everything you just said. I love it. You did just say something about you lost your first husband, though. Is that going to come up in your 5th? Or I didn't know this. I didn't know this about you. I'm sorry to hear that. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, David died of a brain tumor, gosh, nearly 20 years ago now. So that was just an awful time. Awful time.
Oh,
So
sorry.
again, well, thank you for that. Yes, so again, that's probably where girl gangs, you kind of get that ballast. So yeah, that was a horrible time, and we survived it. Work was great. We came back from a holiday in Umbria, and we felt a bit, on Saturday, and he said, I think I'll go to the doctor. I just feel I can't get rid of this virus. And never went to the doctor. I didn't even go with him. Came back on the Monday night and said, the doctor wants me to go to a neurologist tomorrow. I was like, Anyway, by Friday, he was told he had 8 months to live. And he lived for 18 months. It was a very difficult time. And he was much missed. He was a complete legend in our family, and, wonderful man, and died way too young. So that was difficult. But, thank God for family and friends to walk that path. And he was amazing right to the end.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I'm sorry to hear that. I didn't know that about you. And that, if going back to what we said about friendship and family and everything, we hope that these things are not in our future, but nobody knows. And that is when you really need your tribe. That is when all of that investment of give and take for all those years of, love and, that kind of reciprocity. Never say that word. If Chris Grimes is listening, reciprocity. Is that right?
That's it. I love it.
I've got such a blockage on this word. But, that investment we all make in each other, that's when your true riches come forward, and I do believe that true wealth is the people that love us and that we love in return.
Yeah.
For exactly the reason you just said. So, all right. Well, listen, and
I remarried 4 years ago.
So as soon as recent as that, I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations.
So that's pretty amazing.
Oh, well done you. Okay. I love that. Is it okay? Are they number 5? I'm wanting to know who number 5 is now. No. Who's number 5?
I couldn't do, husband. I mean, husbands obviously make a huge different partners, make a huge shaping influence on our life. No, number 5 is my great aunt Madge, my mother's aunt, her mother's sister, my grandmother's sister. And now, why Auntie Madge? She and her sister Patricia, my Auntie Patricia, lived together. They were what in the day was called maiden aunts. So never married. She was a nurse in Egypt during the war. And she, and why? I mean, I guess I wanted to bookend family because they are so important. And why Auntie Madge? She was, obviously had independent means. And she was someone who kind of got me, knew I was an oddball, and sort of gave me refuge. So I would go and stay with Auntie Pat and Madge, who lived next door to my grandparents, and I just loved it. They were very, they weren't working at that stage, but there was a, and they did a lot of charity work and, work in the islands, and they did a lot of charity work. But she had this quietness about her she was the one that discovered I couldn't tell the time when I was about 9 because I'd done something naughty at school, so they wouldn't give me my, time stamp. So I couldn't tell the time. So she just took me aside and taught me to tell the time, and I was about 9, in 20 minutes. Again, books. She was interested in books. And they had a life which was I hadn't really come across. And I guess neither of them had children, neither were married. So they would go and do, it's going to sound ridiculous to you. They would go and do things like in the afternoon, if it was a nice afternoon, just go and have afternoon tea out under the apple tree.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, sounds amazing. But we didn't have time for that. We didn't have that kind of leisure. Or if it was a sunny day, but let's go and have our toast and marmalade out on the front steps in the sunshine. So there was a quietness. I would go and stay with him at school. It sounds like, why did I need, gave you refuge? It's ridiculous. I didn't need refuge, but they had a quieter life. And I loved being able to go in and dip into that. And so it was kind of modeling a different kind of life, a generous, fun. She was fun in a sort of strict way, quiet, intentional, generous with other people. But then they would just, we would go down to the bay and go for a swim in the afternoon, and it was not something that my mother ever had the opportunity to do because she was really busy with kids and earning livings and everything else. But it was quite a different experience seeing these two women who were married, not, living together and having a very different life to the other lives that I had seen, which all these women having, lots of kids.
Yeah. Well, listen, I can see the attraction of all of that. There's something about, I don't know, feminine households. I live with a woman, so Catherine's my partner. And people often come around our house and they go, oh, I just love just being in this feminine space because it's just full of quiet little things and just so things. And it's always, I don't know, a little candle here and there. And there's always fresh flowers. And there's a femininity about it that has its own, I don't know, I suppose for people who mention it, isn't that accessible really in the world. There's not that many homes that have just women in them. Whereas I imagine going into an all-male space has a different energy, equally attractive, but for different reasons. So you have a different kind of feeling as you walk into it. So I think this idea of feminine space, coupled with this unorthodox lifestyle where they can just have tea when they feel like it in the afternoon, it must have been absolutely delicious. Like, oh, I'm just going to go for a little, it's almost like a little spa day at the auntie's, isn't it? I'm just going to let all of that loveliness wash over me and then go back in the world. So I can totally see the attraction of it. I can see why you would be drawn to it. But it's remarkable. I'm just reflecting on your list. There's so many, and this is a feature of the podcast as well. I like to kind of just pause and reflect on the influences of these people. But I like to sort of start from how I see it, and then I'd love to ask you the next question. But there's some themes here. There's resilience from your mum, and that kind of, unorthodoxy definitely runs through all of this. There's the quiet authority that I get from Claudia and Took, and now the aunties, Aunt Madge and Auntie Patricia. There's also all of these people and in your girl gang as well, steeped in very strong values. It's a very values-based life you've led, and also to have the privilege of all these different life experiences. It gives you that roundedness, which I imagine, well, now I know this more about you, gives you that presence that I felt the very first time I met you. This is a woman of substance, is how you come across. This is a woman who's lived a life, who knows things, has done things, has met, wonderful people and overcome maybe not so wonderful people, and has definitely overcome adversity. You exuded that the first time I met you, and now I've heard the people that have influenced you. It's so clear where it's all come from. And your sense of purpose as well in taking all of this and doing something so positive with it. You didn't have to, but you kind of did because you're on the back of these people.
Yeah, that's
so all
true.
all of that is coming through for me. And so this segment, I always like to say to people, well, is there anything that's occurred to you since putting this list together, thinking about these people, sitting quietly, understanding them, that has really kind of smacked you in the face and gone, oh, I got that from this person or that person?
Yeah, probably different components.
Hmm.
I think there was some role modeling in a time when there were very few women, in leadership. So I was able to have someone like Claudia Wysocki and the other women who were running the school. They were very strong educationalists. So people like took different kind of authority that came from a different place, and a place I felt I could access, as opposed to, we know when women often go into authority, they'll get pushed back. So there was that. And I think you're right. You talk about values. Every one of those people are really, it's going to sound so naff, Julia, are really good people.
Yeah.
When I was thinking about even my girl, really good people, right? But really good people,
Yeah.
who are not bitchy, who are generous of spirit, who take joy, curiosity. They generous in every respect. And that's just, very powerful to have that level. And I think sometimes we need to remind ourselves of that, because it's very easy for our brains to go into what's wrong.
Yeah. 100%.
Bad people. And actually, I've just been incredibly lucky to have so many good people in my life to try to role model off, but also who just nourish your soul on a daily basis, because they're in you somehow. And so even though they might not be on the planet anymore, that they have left their mark.
No, it's very clear to me hearing this list where your influences are. So I funny you should say about that even if they're not with us, we still feel it. Because my next question is always, well, okay, you've had all this investment; it's in your DNA now, isn't it? These people imprint themselves on you somehow. So, and I did kind of joke just now saying, well, you've got an obligation to take this stuff forward, but I kind of feel like you do. But also, I know you're doing it, but I wondered if there is something else that you have in mind for the future where you're going to take even more of this stuff or more of who you are and take it forward.
No, I think I don't have any big plan for that other than continue doing what I'm doing, working with women and organizations, and spending time with the good people in my life, trying to love them well, and to get better at that, and just staying really plugged in, continuously curious, because very conscious that I've got a body of knowledge, but it will be morphing. So staying on top of the research, making sure you don't start believing your own publicity, and keeping a fresh frame onto how I can be helpful. Because there's a lot of you can either be very theorizing, that's not helpful to people. Okay, I've got a theory, or very victim creating, and that's not helpful. So how do I find practical, pragmatic ways to accelerate the stereotype atrophy of women take charge, men take care? And a lot of that is about, we need to let men take care.
Yeah, 100%.
Not patronizing for men to say they don't know how to take care. We think it's tough being the only woman in the boardroom. Try being the only man at the school gate. This is a big, let's just, get out of these boxes that are so constraining. But my job is, helping women to take charge, because the thing is, good leadership requires that we take care and take charge. And men and women are completely equally capable of doing both. So until we can just kind of shimmy down this kind of crazy masculine notion of what leadership looks like, and everything in there for the men as well. We still know men are much more, men who ask for flexible working, it's much more career compromising for them. So there's a lot of work to be done. And that's what I love doing right now.
Oh, good. Because you're very good at it. Me fangirling again. This take care, take charge thing. I absolutely know what you mean by it. But isn't it interesting that I see leadership as taking care anyway?
Yeah.
Like taking care of your, that's my dog again. Everybody knows my dog now. It's like she's always appearing. She's
lovely.
No, she isn't. She's very irritating. I think to me, leadership is taking care. It is taking care of your people, your business, all the mechanics of your responsibilities. To me, that's the epitome of leadership, is taking care of the most vulnerable people in your organization. So the quietest spirits to the most ambitious, noisy ones, taking care of all of them and everything in between. So I've always had that feeling about leadership anyway, which doesn't play to any gender stereotype actually.
Yeah.
Because you can be male or female and have that sense of responsibility and caretaking. So that's how I see it.
Capable of deploying that, and they do. And so this stereotype that kind of is still embedded, and I keep doing the research, and it's sort of like, oh, aren't we done with that? Stereotypes are very stubborn, and that sort of men take charge, women take care is at the heart of that double bind of when women, when they really exercise their authority or agency, which is what we need to do as leaders, they will kind of often get pushed back because we're behaving counter-stereotypically by men and women, by the way. So this is an evil plot for men to get women out of boardrooms. It's more subtle than that, but not insurmountable.
I suppose it's a rally cry from me to say, taking care is fine, guys.
Exactly.
Taking care is positive. Just, you don't need to kind of...
And it's important.
Yeah.
It's not anti-leadership. It's at the heart of leadership. I agree.
Because when you say take charge, visually, I see a man at the front with people behind. And I don't think that's needed now and then when in a super crisis. And again, men or women can take that role. But generally speaking, you've got to look inwards and look behind you and go, I need to look after you lot. Right. Exactly. Enough about that. Again, we could do a whole podcast on what we think about leadership. All right. Well, listen, we're coming to sort of the end of this format. My last question is always one I hope you've prepared for, Penny, because I'm fascinated to see who you've chosen. Who shall I speak to next and why?
Well, I think someone who would be really interesting is Mark Baldwin.
Okay.
Who is, he was my neighbour. He grew up, right out at Eastern Beach in Auckland, over the road. He's a few years older than me, sort of my older sister's age. But he's was the director of Rombear, so he's spent most of his working life in London. And so he's, gone to every of his shows. I don't know him at all now. Occasionally we connect on LinkedIn. But I think he would be a really interesting person. I'd be interested to know in his five, and has had a really fascinating career. And that whole, again, which I know you're really great at, is that whole creativity and leadership, and so I think that he would be a really, really good podcast.
Ah, amazing. Well, let's see if we can make that happen between us. Mark, we're coming for you. Mark Baldwin.
Baldwin, watch out.
Well, listen, Penny, I was so excited about this conversation. I think that was probably clear from the first 20 minutes. I'm going to listen back to this and go, oh, Julia, really? You were probably a bit pushy at the beginning. But no, it's been an absolute joy.
I think so great about the podcast. It feels like a very natural conversation, very authentic conversation. So I want to thank you for that.
Oh, no, honestly, it's been an absolute joy for me to spend this time with you, get to know you a bit better, and just give you the opportunity to share your philosophy on all of the, challenges that we're all facing. But you are definitely a very positive solution to many of the things that we're struggling with in the world. And I wish you all the very best with everything you're doing. I will continue to follow you, listen to your podcast. Grit in the Oyster, everybody. Everyone listen to that. And I absolutely just wish you all the very best. So thank you for joining me today.
Julia. It's been an absolute pleasure.
So that was a wonderful Penny de Valk there. Hope you enjoyed that one. And if you did, please like, subscribe, comment, share, get involved in some way. I always like it when you do. Next week, we have Matt Burton. And gosh, I can't wait to share this one too. Matt is so diverse in his thoughts, in his activities. And this choice of 5 I found absolutely fascinating. Just to give you some idea, one of them was the band Chicago, and he'll explain why. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to sharing this one with you. So until then, have a great week ahead, and I'll see you then with Matt Burton. Take care. Bye.